Well, summer vacation time. How many of you have already had a summer vacation? You guys vacation all the time. How many have a summer vacation coming up? Okay, all right. It's a lot of vacationers in here. I just like to vacation all the time. I was trying to think of my summer vacation jokes. This is an old one about a little boy returning to school at the end of August. They had to make a little statement about what they did on their summer vacation, and he said, well, my family and I went to Minneapolis, Minnesota. And the teacher said, well, that's an excellent spelling word. Would you like to spell that for us? And he said, on second thought, we went to Ohio. Probably the easiest to spell state union, isn't it? And then there's this one that resonates with us because we just had a little vacation in Canada, a little bit up into Ontario, Canada. One Canadian said to the other Canadian, so did you have a good summer? And the other Canadian said, yes, we had a picnic that afternoon. They're short up there. We found they were just a few weeks behind us. Lilacs were blooming. We had lilacs 2-3 weeks ago, right? So we got to add it to our spring in early summer. Summer vacations, summer times. Remember what summers were like when we were kids, how long they seemed, how timeless. Maybe there are some cultural reasons for that. I mean, I think parenting has changed, and I think in those days life wasn't so child-focused. Just get outside. That's how I kind of remember summers. Now I think there's a lot of activities, there's a lot of things like that. But there's also other reasons why children have a gift for experiencing summer in a way that sometimes adults have trouble with. How do we make sure our summer vacations are really vacations, are really nourishing and enriching for us? That's what I've been kind of reflecting on a little bit today. Tips for that, ideas for having a really spiritually enriching summer vacation. Because we probably all had the experience of if you go on vacation and really just kind of take your worries with you. It didn't really come back really refreshed or replenished, but pretty much the same way. I think there's some things we can think about to kind of make sure our vacations are truly spiritually enriching. So here's a few I came up with. The first one is the main definition for vacation is a fixed period away from usual occupations. A fixed period away from usual occupations. That seems really basic, but there's kind of a fair amount built into that. Built into it is the idea, the recognition that we need to fix it. We need a fixed period. We need to be certain about it. We must have an intention to not pursue the usual occupations. We're giving ourselves a break. We're intentional about that. There's a deep spiritual need for that, I think, and unless we give ourselves that, we may be undermining our spiritual centeredness and our spiritual growth. All spiritual traditions have teachings about rest, about vacations, taking a vacation from your usual occupations, taking that fixed period. In the Hebrew, in the Torah, it's the Sabbath. The Sabbath. The Hebrew word comes from shavat, which means cease or desist. Stop doing, stop the usual occupations. Give yourself a fixed period every week, whether it's Saturday or Sunday. Give yourself that break from your usual occupations. It's a deep spiritual need to cease, to desist from the usual things. Rest yourselves. Jesus taught this all the time with his disciples. There's lots of scriptures about him telling his disciples to rest, to take a break. There's one from Mark 6. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. They were proud. They'd been very busy. They'd been doing a lot. I like that. I can relate to that. It's my list. When I check things off so nicely, I can scratch everything off on that list. Yeah. And he said to them, come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while. For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. We get into that place. We have no leisure even to sit and enjoy a meal without thinking about what we have to do next or where we have to go. He's saying to them, come away, put some distance between you and your usual occupations. You need to claim that time. And not just once a week. He did this routinely. In fact, as you kind of read through the gospel accounts, it's like this rhythm of rest and work, of solitude up on a mountain or in a garden, and then public teaching and healing activity. There's a lot of quotes about he went off himself to take rest routinely, not just a Sabbath day, but whenever he was in need of it, routinely. And after he dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. It's from Matthew 14. Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. Mark 9. Now during those days he went out to the mountain to pray, and he spent the night in prayer to God, from Luke 6. There's a routine as a part of his way of life, of communing with God, of resting, taking periods apart from usual occupations, and then returning refreshed and better able to minister and to heal. Fixed times apart. Mother Teresa taught that routinely to her Sisters of Mercy. She always taught them, you must feed yourself first before you can feed others. We have to feed ourselves in solitude and communion with God. So take a fixed period apart. That's a basic for vacation, if we want to be enriched, nourished by our times in vacation. Second one goes back to the idea of those childhood summers. Live in the timeless present. Try to get off the clock and be here now, Ram Dass said. Be here now. Rest in the present. Children have a wonderful ability to do that. Just the hours just go by timelessly playing outdoors. I remember that. Do you? How you could just spend time around a creek, or something like that, or in the yard, and the hours would just go by, and you'd just, be enjoying and taking note of whatever was happening right around you. We forget to do that, or we lose the kind of the ability for that as we become adults if we're not careful. I mentioned, Joe and I just had a little 5 days in Canada. It was only about a 5.5-hour drive up that way in Ontario. And we made a decision, which turned out to be a wise one, to take the golden retrievers with us. Because having your dogs with you changes a little bit the way you experience a vacation. So it's not about going in and out of shops or spending time sitting in restaurants, or things like that, or going to museums. It's about hanging out on the front porch and looking at the lake and letting the hours go by, and maybe doing a little reading or journaling, and going out and picking up food and making it at home and enjoying and sitting with the dogs, who always live in the present, right? Those of you who have pets, they're always living in the timeless present. It's us that don't get that sometimes. So being in the companionship of the dogs on vacation, it helped us get into more of that timeless state. I've been on vacations in the past where it was a lot of tearing around. Got to see this site, that site, in and out of, a lot of sitting in restaurants, or going in and out of shops, looking at things that I really don't need to buy. This kind of slowed us down and brought us more into the timeless present. That's a great gift. That's when Jesus taught as well. Take no thought for tomorrow will take thought for the things of itself. Worry about tomorrow. Be here now. This is where God is. This is where our experience of God is in the present. That's when we can feel the fullness of life and feel in touch with that. Is here now. I like this passage from the poet Rumi, the Sufi poet Rumi. He said, past and future veil God from our sight. Burn up both of them with fire. I like that. So live in that, bring yourself into the present. Make sure that gets worked into your vacation plans. Some time to just be here now, be in the moment. Third one, and I think this is the deepest and the most mysterious one. Be empty. Be empty. Vacation calls us to a special kind of vacancy. The word is in there, vacate, vacant. It's in the word vacation. A special vacancy and openness calls us to that. The root of vacation is vacatus from Latin. It means to be empty. To be empty. And we see that root in a lot of other words, even like vacuum, empty, vacate, vacant. We must empty ourselves, meaning we must be open and receptive. Not full of ourselves and our plans, but open, creating a kind of space in us. And it's a generative space. When we create that kind of openness, like we're off the clock, we're off the calendar, we've created this space for ourselves, we're open, we don't have ourselves all booked up and rushing around, we've created some space. When we do that, life rushes in, creative energy rushes in. You know that old thing about nature abhors a vacuum? I don't really know what the root of that idiom was, but to me it kind of means that emptiness is generative. If you create an open space, God is going to come in more. You created some space for life to come in. When we're so full of our plans and our busyness day by day, there's often no room for God to do any work in us. No room for any creative new ideas to arise in mind or for guidance to come because we're so busy. That to-do list is so relentless. And there's a lot of, if you sort of reflect on your own experience with vacations, there's a lot of creative energy that arises if we let ourselves get off the clock and into the moment and empty ourselves out a little bit, become vacant in that way. Meister Eckhart, a 13th century mystic, he had a saying that's always stuck in my mind. He said, emptiness makes water flow uphill. There's miracles in it. There's mystery and miracles in this emptiness that we're talking about. The kind of open, generative emptiness. Receptivity, kind of a very open receptivity. And I think it's often, if we reflect on your own experience with vacations, there's evidence, I think, in all our lives of this happening. That somehow or other giving ourselves time and space allowed ideas to emerge in us, allowed guidance to come. I was remembering a time, it was back in '09, it was the year Joe was retiring from Ohio State, and it was after a vacation we took to Hawaii that year. The Big Island, where you guys were just recently. I don't know whether you went to the Big Island, but the volcanic one is Hawaii, the Big Island. Didn't really have much to do with where we went, but somehow or other I had been thinking about I needed a break from church ministry, and I'd been thinking about it, couldn't get clear about it, but somehow after that vacation away, I came back with clarity. It was time to take a break. And once something becomes clear, pathways become clear of how to do things and how to move forward on it. But it's the decision making. The clarity came through vacation because I was in a place where we were in the timeless present. I wasn't on a clock or on a calendar. I didn't have a to-do list. Had a lot of openness and receptivity, and I always do journaling when I'm on vacation, when I'm anywhere, because I have time. I'm not to do that. And the ideas came, and it turned out actually Hawaii's a great place to go if you're especially reflecting on creative energy and how you're meant to direct your creative energy, because volcanic activity is very creative stuff, and it has a lot of emptiness in it, doesn't it? It kind of erupts and empties out, and this fiery lava flows out, and yes, it's destructive, but it's also creates new islands. That's how they formed. It's black molten stuff at first, and it takes a long time for it to become earth, where things grow again, but that's how these islands form, volcanic activity. So what a powerful image to look at. Emptiness, the power of emptiness, and how that makes creative energy happen and flow for us. I've heard similar accounts from other people about how somehow on vacation the ideas came together about something new they needed to do. Maybe it was a change in occupation, maybe it's a change in lifestyle, maybe it's a move of some kind, or something in a relationship. Maybe you decide to get married, or you decide to get divorced, or whatever it might, some kind of change might come. I've heard a lot of stories of that somehow strangely follow a vacation. There's something about getting ourselves out of the usual routines, that fixed period away from usual occupations, that opens the mind, frees the mind from constraints, and allows divine ideas to flow. And it happens in a lot of different ways. I was remembering way back in childhood, I must have been about 10 or 11 maybe. My mother had a beauty shop business, I think many of you know, I've shared before. And I had an older brother and sister, 5 and 7 years ahead of me. And one was going to be going into college in a year, and then the other one 2 years later, they were going to be overlapping in college. And my mother knew she had to change her little back of the house beauty shop business into something else. And for some reason, as I was reflecting on this, I had these vivid memories of a time we were on vacation. We'd driven up to my grandparents in upstate New York and gotten snowed out in Erie, Pennsylvania, and had to get off the road. If any of you are familiar with Erie, Pennsylvania, it's cold up there. It snows a lot, and so we had to just get off the road and spend a night in a motel. And she was thinking about this, and we just did visioning of her new beauty shop, that she was going to buy a house, maybe an old Victorian house in our small town. They had a lot of those, and refurbish it for a beauty salon. And we envisioned how it was going to be Danielle, the name of the salon, which is my middle name. It's named after me, this shop. There's going to be an awning out front, big red awning, and a red carpet. Indoor and outdoor carpeting red, and Danielle blazoned across the side of that canopy. And there'd be a reception area where there'd be coffee and soft drinks, and there'd be a wig room. Wigs were big then. I don't know whether they're big now or not. I think so, but wigs were big then. There'd be a wig room and a wig specialist in there. And she wanted lights around all the mirrors in front of the stations through the shop, and the whole thing was envisioned. There was going to be an apartment above it that would be rented out, and I just remember as a 10-year-old being very excited during this whole visioning process of just seeing the whole thing, a new shop, what it was going to look like, droves of women that would come. Men didn't come in those days to salons, and what that was going to be like, and lots of excitement and energy about it. And why did that happen? We were on vacation. It can be a wonderful time to vision, to think of possibilities, to let your mind spin out, because you don't have to be practical, and you don't have anything you have to do next, or in the next, hour or 8 hours. You can just be empty, and that vacancy somehow generates new energy. It gives God room to work in us. It gives God room to bring new creative ideas to the surface, to bring guidance to the surface that's a change maybe we need to make, and we haven't been clear on it. Maybe that clarity will come on vacation if we have that kind of emptiness in it, and we make ourselves vacant in that way. So that's the main three. Take that fixed period, make a commitment to it. Live in the timeless present, be here now, and be empty. Create that kind of vacancy and openness. And then the last one is just be alert then, because divine guidance is going to flow. Divine ideas will arise, and we need to be prepared to maybe move on them if something comes. Be aware you're tapping into creative energy strongly if you do this, if you take that fixed period, if you set aside your worries about the future or about the past, if we empty ourselves out and are in the timeless present, who knows what God will bring forth in you and for you. I vacation in the timeless present, and God blesses me. I vacation in the timeless present, and God blesses me. Want to say that with me? I vacation in the timeless present, and God blesses me. Let's take that into prayer for a moment. Affirm that truth within. I vacation in the timeless present. I allow myself to take a break from our usual occupations. We rest. We set aside our worries, our concerns, our plans. Whether we go away or whether we stay home, we let ourselves rest in God and let God guide us and direct us. Let God fill us with that creative energy and that renewing life as we rest and receive and be grateful. Thank Thank you, God, for your living presence within and all around us. Amen.